So now that we are live, I will call this meeting to order at 3:34. And let me just share the this. Okay, there's the agenda. So open forum. Does anybody have anything that they would like to share with the committee under open forum? Donna, you need to unmute.
Sorry about that.
No
I
problem.
do, just because a couple of the junior high teachers have asked me about Chromebooks versus iPads, and I know we've gone back and forth on this a lot, especially with the very real possibility of us having to do distance learning again in the fall.
Mm-hmm.
I know we're committed to iPads, but is there any way we could look into making keyboards that link to the iPads accessible for some students that really feel they need that in order to complete their work? The keyboards is not having a keyboard is a real issue for students when they're doing writing paragraphs and writing essays.
I do understand. So my problem with that is iPads are already the most expensive student device we use, and now we're looking at adding additional cost on top of it, which is not budgeted, but we can investigate it. Are you looking for them for all of your students? Is it only a portion?
I think there's only a small number of students that don't have some sort of desktop or laptop available to them in their home.
Okay.
And this is for right now, the concern is mostly for if we go remote.
Which, looking at the, being on the planning committee for that, there's 3 different plans. One is all in person, one is all remote, and one is somewhere in the middle.
Right.
So we need the plan to go in and out of remote learning for next year. Because there will be times when people are quarantined, or maybe, we have to go back to all remote if cases spike or whatever the case may be. So I would say it's something we can investigate. It would be helpful if we had, at least some idea of how many we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe, you could poll the students at the junior high school and see how many would benefit from something like that. And, we could submit that as a COVID expense, I guess. So something to look at.
Okay. Thank you. I was also wondering, when are we up? I know we're just renewed our iPad commitment. So when would we be looking at making a decision of iPads versus Chromebooks again? How many years is that cycle?
Well, we haven't purchased new iPads yet. So,
okay.
I mean, if that's something that the junior high wants to reevaluate, now's the time to do it before I place the order. I have not placed the order yet. It'll probably be, they're having some trouble with the new accounting system, so it'll probably be a little bit of time before I can place that order. So if that's something that you guys want to change, have Mary reach out to me right away.
Okay, I'll talk to Mary about that.
And like I've said in the past, what we can do is buy Chromebooks and iPads. If we were one-to-one with Chromebooks, we could still have carts of iPads in the classroom for the classes that really benefit from the iPads. So I don't, because we're already doing it the other way. So we can go, we could spend the same amount of money on devices at the junior high and do one-to-one with Chromebooks with iPads as well.
Okay. Good to know. Thank you.
So that was my question, actually, to help me understand where I'm newer to this committee, if that was a junior high decision to use iPads, because I hear the same thing from students and witnessed it, with Devin and Caleb when he was a junior high student, that the iPad was more cumbersome for them to use as students when they needed to do actual real work other than reading something.
Yeah, I mean, that is a school level decision.
Okay. And it would be, it sounds like, more fiscally doable for us.
It would be probably the same, because we'd spend the same amount of money. We'd just buy Chromebooks for all the students and then buy iPads on carts for classrooms instead of the other way around.
But you could have fewer iPads, which are more expensive in that
Well,
case, right?
I don't want to do it to save money. I want to do it because it's more effective for the students' learning. It's really not about the money. The district's committed to doing iPads if that's what the junior high needs to effectively teach their kids. But if it's not, then if they feel like they could do just as well a job or even better with iPads, then let's do that. Here's Michelle Bressler.
I think 2 or 3 years ago, we issued a survey to junior students, and by a wide margin, their preference for schoolwork was to use a Chromebook
Hey,
as an
Art,
iPad.
your audio is cutting out. You want to try shutting off your video and see if that gives you a little more bandwidth for the audio? Try that again.
I'll try again. So probably maybe 3 years ago, we did a survey with the junior high students. By a wide margin, they indicated preference for Chromebooks versus iPads for the work that they were being assigned.
So, I mean, the process right now is driven by, the junior high staff telling me that they prefer to use iPads in the curriculum. But if they want to migrate that, we can do that. It's an option.
Is it an option for different teams to choose different devices?
So I don't have a problem with that as long as they commit to it for 3 years.
Okay. So it's a 3-year commitment.
Yes.
Okay, good. I am going to pursue that, and I will be back to you within a couple of days to let you know where we're going to go with it.
Okay. And you just have to run it by Mary. I wouldn't want to go forward without her blessing. But.
Well, that's where I'm going to start with
Right.
Mary and see if Mary wants me to survey the faculty or not.
Okay.
And I'll let you know whether we're going to go forward or just leave it as it is for now.
All right. Sounds like a plan.
Donna, I'm going to send you a link to the survey that was ago.
Okay, I think I understood that. Thanks.
So while we're under open forum, Joe, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hang on, I had to unmute myself first. I'm Joe Capaco. I been up at the North Smithfield School District as a system admin network administrator for 4 years. And prior to that, worked with Jeremy down in Westerly for about 4 years. Prior to that, I worked for Reiner for about 7 years. And I'll be joining Exeter-West Greenwich.
He was appointed last night, so I asked him to jump on the call to introduce himself.
Well, welcome
aboard.
Joe.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, welcome.
I'm very excited to have Joe aboard.
And I'm very excited to be working with such a talented team.
Anything else under open forum? No? Okay. I don't have the minutes completed for the meeting on 6:30, so we'll table that. New business, reopening planning. So I know there's a bunch of committees and subcommittees going. And I know that, technology is part of that planning process. So are there any concerns, or is there anything that you can think of that I need to bring to that committee to make sure that it doesn't get overlooked? Any technology issues you had with remote learning, or even just going back to school with, the virus procedures in place? Anything that you're concerned about that you want to make sure that they cover?
I got a couple things.
Okay.
I'd like to pursue the Chrome remote access for the video production kids.
Okay.
And not a double hop remote access thing, just if there's a way we could get, and it would require the kids themselves to log in on the MacBooks, not the MacBooks, the iMacs. I would like to pursue that so that they can access those machines, you know, if we're in a blended or distance learning environment.
Yeah, I don't see that as a, who just joined? Oh, okay.
Oh, sorry.
No problem.
Hi, Michelle.
Hi, everybody. My computer's not working, the microphone's not working, so I was just juggling a bit, but
No problem. Glad to have you. Yeah, Art, that's not a problem. And we did the double hop because we didn't have access to the students to have them sign in, but
Right.
we can get it to the point where the students are signed in. The problem you have is only one user can be assigned to each device for Chrome Remote Desktop.
Right. And so that would be the video production kids.
Right.
So that's what I'm going to go for.
Not a problem. We can make that happen.
So I have a couple of concerns about the Chrome carts. If we're in school, just there would need to be some really clear guidelines about how they're cleaned, how they're handled, how they're transmitted between the Chrome carts and the kids. Right now, it's been really, really an open forum. The Chrome cart is there, kids walk in the room, grab the Chromebook, put it back, put it in their lockers. I don't know if you know how many Chromebooks from the Chrome cart in the junior high were found in student lockers. But so it's really been very willy-nilly. And I think for COVID concerns, we have to have a really clear protocol for cleaning them and who can use them, and, you know, but also I think moving forward, having clear expectations about keeping track of them would also be beneficial.
Yes, and that's one of the things that I want to touch on under software. But I've found that there's much more accountability even when you're using carts and sharing them, you assign a device to a student. So in your A period class, you know, Tim Johnson gets Chromebook number 1, and every time he comes to your class, he gets Chromebook number 1. And in your B period class, it's assigned to somebody else, but that device, you know, that way you can track only these number of people use that device, and they tend to get broken a lot less. You know, they tend to not be missing keys. They tend to not go missing. So, you know, I know it's a pain, but it's something I recommend.
So Jeremy, I agree with you. It's the best way to go, and it's a pain. And because it's a pain, there are teachers that do that, but there are teachers that have never been given that directive, that it's an expectation. And so if you want that to happen, that has to come as an expectation from administration, clearly communicated. I think there are, unfortunately, some situations where that's the only way to get people that are handling the Chrome carts to do it that way.
And to be honest with you, Donna, it doesn't matter if we reverse it. If the kids are one-to-one with Chromebooks, do the same thing with iPads.
Right, right.
So, I mean, I will talk to Mary and see if we can communicate that as an expectation, especially next year, because then you know who touched that device, and then you know who might have been exposed if there's a quarantine.
Right.
And as far as the cleaning of the devices, it's going to have to be, you know, cleaning on your way in and out, the same as the desks. So when you take it out, you clean it. Before you put it back, you clean it, and the next person who takes it out cleans it.
Leave the
There's
cart have its like cleaning supplies right with it. Is that what we're envisioning?
yeah, well, I mean, students are going to have to clean their workstations, like their desks. You know, when they sit down with a Chromebook, they clean the Chromebook, they clean the desk, whatever. And then the same thing before they leave. They'll clean the desk, they'll clean the Chromebook, put it back in the cart. And then the high touch surfaces, the chrome doors and stuff will need to be cleaned regularly too.
And just to speak to that assignment, I know when I was over at Wawalome and Metcalf, that is how we did it by classroom, is like each student was assigned to whatever number device was in the cart, 1 through 20, whatever. And that.
Yeah, I think we made that recommendation at some point, and
Yeah.
it's an expectation at Metcalf, and it's not an expectation at the junior high.
It made it much easier.
Anything else? that
I
you can
had-
think of?
I had the cleaning thing down on my list, and the 2 things that I had put down was the question that Donna already brought up about iPads for the junior high versus Chromebooks, and then at the same kind of tie-in, the younger kids, like the kindergarten kids, I almost think would do better with iPads versus
So-
Chromebooks because of the touch surface. They seem to more innately be able to use that, and the programs that they were using seem to be a little more friendly with iPad versus Chromebook.
And that's actually in the plan. Let me pull that up.
Fantastic.
I really love this tool, this extension called Less Tabs, because it closes any tab that you've had open for more than 24 hours and puts it in a list on your new tab screen. But what annoys me about it is my new tab screen no longer has the Google Apps waffle. So I have to go find my email.
The good
So-
and bad.
Right now, the plan that I developed with Melissa calls for 15 Chromebooks and 21 iPads in kindergarten. And the idea was to set up stations in each classroom because they do a lot of station rotation.
Yep.
And they would have, 3 iPads and 2 Chromebooks or whatever the case is for each classroom, so they could do stations. And the idea was 2 kids would be working together on a Chromebook because that seems to work really well. And then, with the iPads, you'd have them each using one.
And if we went to distance learning with those kids, what would be their one-to-one, the iPad?
So the school committee supported our recommendation to purchase our FMV leases for all the Chromebooks that are ending. So we actually bought out those 600 and some odd devices that we were planning to send back this summer. So those will be available to loan to families who don't have devices at home. So as part of Jim's survey, I had him add a question saying, how many devices do you need at home to support remote learning for your elementary school kids? And out of 75% of the families who responded, there's 365 Chromebooks needed at home to support remote learning. So we'll probably just issue them to keep at home for remote learning. And maybe homework and whatever they need, because and some of the plans, people are still floating ideas, but some of the ideas I've heard would require them to have a device at home. So like to reduce the number of people you need supervising classes and reduce the interaction between pods, one of the ideas at the elementary school is to have specials be remote from home after the kids get home. So they get dismissed early. Say, instead of going home at 3, they go home at 1:30. And then when they get home, they're expected to watch their special, their library or whatever remotely. Whatever the class is, their health class, they do remotely. That's just one of the ideas. I don't know whether that'll actually happen, but in order to facilitate that, all the students need to be prepared to do remote learning, which 365 of them aren't right now. Was there anything else on that I might have missed? I kind of went off on a soliloquy there. Did I cover the question? Okay. Anything else anybody can think of on that topic? All right, we'll go to software survey and planning. So Art sent me his analysis of the survey, which was interesting. Do you want to talk about that at all, Art?
Yeah, we basically issued a form. We wanted to know what the name of the resource is that people found really interesting, or resources that people found really essential for supporting distance learning. And I think there were a lot of them out there that are being used that we didn't even know about. So I left it entirely open-ended, and then basically normed that data based on misspellings and spaces and hyphens and things like that. Basically, so the questions are, what is the name of the resource, and how reliant on your teaching strategy, how reliant have your teaching strategies become on this resource? And so the big ones on that are Screencastify and Edpuzzle at 13 mentions and 11 mentions, followed by Padlet and Actively Learn and Zoom at 4, 4, and 3 respectively. I've already fielded a couple of emails from people who have gotten notifications from Screencastify that, hey, your freebie is ending. And they reached out to me in panic mode. And so anyway.
So I did reach out to some of these. I also, so let's just start out with that. So I reached out to Screencastify. A district license is $37.50 a year.
Wow.
Which is actually really cheap when you consider that Screencastify is $99 per year per person.
Right, but there are also alternatives that work. Like Loom, for example, doesn't have the time limit. It doesn't have the watermark. It's not as convenient as Screencastify, but it's also quite serviceable.
Right.
For the bubble.
Although Loom is not free either. Like there's a limitation on the free version.
Yeah, you get so many per month, and
yeah, so $25 videos is the limit on the basic for free.
Is that per month or period?
That's Loom is per, doesn't say, just says 25 video limit.
Like 25 limit to the free subscription if I log in, like just try to set up right now.
Right now, Loom is still free. So we have a premium version when you use an email address in our district. But that is going to go away at some point.
Yeah,
but it is, you know, and Loom Pro isn't much cheaper. You know, it's $120 a year per person. And then if you want the enterprise features, it's $45 a month per creator, which is just crazy.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it's really crazy how much these companies want to get for this stuff. Now, I know there's a K-12 discount, and I accounted for that in Screencastify, but you know,
well, based on what happened last during the last vote, is something like Screencastify or Edpuzzle even possible?
Yeah, if it's something like, here's what the thing: we can put forward a recommendation, and whether or not the school committee acts on it is up to them. They have the money to cover the shortfall in the unassigned fund balance. I know they don't want to dip into it that much, so I'm sure they'll end up making cuts. But you know, if there's, and plus we could submit these for COVID reimbursement, because we wouldn't be looking at buying this if it weren't for COVID. Whether or not we get any more money for that, who knows? But you know, even like the buying out of the fair market value leases, the school committee was adamant that we put in for reimbursement for it, whether we're going to get it or not. So it, just in case some money does get freed up, we'll get reimbursed for it.
Right.
Um,
The other option for Chromebook teachers is WeVideo's got a screen recorder.
Oh, they do.
Yeah, yeah.
So we're already paying for a WeVideo license. So if that
Yep.
works, that would be my recommendation.
It works. It's cumbersome because you've got to log into WeVideo, load, create a project, have a timeline all set up, and then you can go record your screen, and then you have to export your project.
Right.
And then download it from WeVideo or serve it from WeVideo, whatever you want to do on that. So
Right.
it works, and it's probably a tool that I use if I'm in the middle of a project already, and I have WeVideo open, and the timeline's all set up and ready to go.
What if we reached out to WeVideo and asked them, like as a feature request, to create a quick selfie video feature?
I almost want,
Well,
there used to be an
it already
extension. I
does
don't know if
that,
there's
I
a,
believe, too, because Evan was helping me do something on there where it would just record you like a selfie doing it. It's just not very intuitive to use, like the way it guides you through the steps.
Yeah.
I'm pretty good at that stuff usually, and I was getting jammed up with it, but Evan was familiar with it, so he could step in and show me how to do it.
Right.
For people using the MacBooks, it's not an issue. They can just use QuickTime.
Right. So I don't know that I would recommend Screencastify. I mean, that's a big amount of money to spend on something that we already have tools that can do. And you know, you could use Loom or you could use WeVideo. Edpuzzle is not very much. So we're already budgeted to spend $1,350 per year for Edpuzzle for the junior senior high school. They told me they could upgrade it to cover Metcalf and Wobble for a total cost of $2,500. So we're less than twice as much. We could cover basically the whole district. I don't think they'd use it at Lynham, but so I mean that's an option if there's interest. I don't know where those survey responses came from.
For the premium tools thing?
Yeah, so if it was already at the junior senior high school, they already have Edpuzzle premium. But if it was at Metcalf, they don't.
All right, so I've got all of the email addresses for that. We could do a breakout of that.
Okay. So that might be something we could, and even if it, and just adding Metcalf was like 650.
And I know there was teachers there using it because Cora touched on it too, as well as the boys.
Okay, so maybe that's what we need to look at is who actually wants that, and maybe we go forward with that because it's not that big a spend in addition to what we already have budgeted.
And it's really an incredibly useful tool.
Yes, and I've seen that. I've seen the demos, and I can totally understand why people like using it. Padlet Premium is $1,500 per school. I'm not sure what that gives you is the Padlet briefcases, I think they're called. I don't know whether that's something we need. I know Padlet itself is free, but if you want their premium features, it's $1,500 per school.
The problem with the free one is I think you have like 4 or 5 available to you. I'm paying for it now because we used it a lot. It's just a really easy way for kids to share what they're doing. So I think I'm paying $10 a month right now for unlimited or for a lot. I haven't run out yet.
Right. So, I mean, if I don't mind putting forward a recommendation for something that is unique. You know, nothing else we have is going to do what Padlet does, as far as I know. And it's used. So maybe that's one we can look into. And maybe we don't need to use it at every school. We'll look at who requested it and go from there. Someone put down Zoom. We are already paying for Zoom. That was a COVID expense from last year because I needed the premium features to be able to do the school committee meetings and all the public meetings like this one. So, you know, as long as people are continuing to use that, we'll continue to pay for it. By having the premium version, we increase the number of people who can join a meeting to 300. I'm not sure what their free tier is once their promotion period ends. We'll have to look into that, but that $1,800 a year is only 20 users. Right now, Waterloom is using most of those, and then administration is using a few. And then I saw Seesaw on there. There weren't as many requests for it, but I did check it out. It's $5.50 per student per year.
I think some of the features that you get with the paid version of Seesaw would be the ability to move classes and kind of like a district-wide management of that, rather than just. I mean, there may be some other premium features, but I think you get a more holistic view of your kids.
Oh, you definitely do. You can have more teachers assigned to each class, and
yeah.
You can directly add students instead of them having to add themselves. You can enable the sign in with Google and assign the accounts. We can get them to sign a student data privacy agreement. There's a lot of features that adds, but I wouldn't want to pay for it for schools that aren't going to use Seesaw.
About the
Right.
students that I
Right.
helped during the time, I basically saw that through K through 2, I think, students.
So I know there were some at Metcalf that were using it.
Yeah, that was your
And
second graders.
a lot, about half of Waterloom was using it.
Yeah, all the K's and 1s that I helped.
Well, some of the, I don't remember which was which, but one class started with Class Dojo and the other started with Seesaw, and I think they migrated to Seesaw halfway through the remote learning. And that's one thing that that parents really want, is much more standardization in the platforms. You know, and I get it. If you've got 3 kids in school in our district, you're looking at 20 plus platforms that your kids are on every day.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
a lot.
In
And there's even inconsistencies in the way that kids find out what they're supposed to be doing. So some teachers would send an email, and some teachers would put it in Google Classroom, and some teachers would use Seesaw. So, you know, it wasn't clear even what they should have their kids working on or how to help them.
Yeah, that was a big challenge. Back to more of like the comparison with Seesaw and Dojo for those younger kids. When I was helping a few students, the biggest thing that I appreciated was that the younger kids could learn to navigate Seesaw themselves independently without a parent helping faster.
Yep.
Than when they were trying to do things through Google Classroom and through Dojo. So like your kindergartners and first graders, you had to be right there, like one-on-one, to help them figure out how to get just from platform to platform and within the documents and how to type. But with Seesaw, they seemed much more independent.
It's a much more intuitive interface,
Oh,
I find. So the kids do just figure it out, which is good. You know, that's a feature.
And if they could use it on a tablet or a touchscreen device too, the families that I happened to see doing it that way, it was even better for them, for those kindergartners.
Right. So maybe we could look at which schools requested that, maybe talk to some principals and see if we can at least, get an idea of which grade levels plan to continue to use Seesaw next year. And, maybe look into a recommendation on that one. Was there, those were the ones that I looked up the pricing on. Were there any others that were, I don't think I got too far into that list. News ELA. There were a few requests for that one.
Yeah.
And Nearpod. I know that the junior high pays for some individual teachers who use those. I don't want to pay for a district-wide license of something that people aren't going to use widely. So, I just want to, with only 3 people mentioning it, I don't know that we want to pay for that.
Yeah, I'm almost done with the breakout on the teachers. On that.
Is some of this about helping people to see the features of this? I'm sorry if you already spoke about this, but we're saying, well, we don't want people you don't want to subscribe if people aren't going to use it. But I showed somebody Padlet and they were like, whoa, if they don't have an awareness that this is simpler for, say, a kindergarten or a second grade classroom to be using a platform that's more intuitive. I mean, as a mom who's home with 3 kids, it is very, very helpful. So I don't know how to get that information to people most easily, but
well, and that's a good question, Michelle, because we did put together a huge website of materials and it didn't get much visitation after the first couple of weeks.
It was overwhelming. I mean, I think people were just overwhelmed by life and then overwhelmed by putting together something their students could do. And then for me, it was like, I use Google Classroom every day as a rule. And I was posting my son's assignments and not hitting submit. Someone who uses this constantly. Like, I think we were all on an overwhelm, but that list, there has to be a way to show, instead of just saying, here's a list, to show how people are using things successfully so that, when we are, because we will be doing some remote learning, like how do we empower people to use these tools best and to show what people are doing quite well?
Right.
Looking at the school calendar, there are a number of distance learning PD days that have been carved out, and those would be great opportunities for the unconference type thing to happen.
A virtual conference is a great idea.
Where you might demo Padlet for elementary school teachers to give them that wow, oh my gosh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, Gina Kilday showed me how to use I can't even think of what it's called now. It's something it was a Google tool, but I didn't know it existed, and it was so cool, and the students responded so well to it. And I just thought, like, how many opportunities are there like this where we're not able to share it when I see it on a list and I'm overwhelmed and I'm just thinking about everything I need to do, as opposed to seeing a Screencastify version of that. You know what I'm saying?
And time carved out to do that.
Yes.
It's not just about, because, there's a million videos out there about all the cool things in ed tech, but you don't have time to go find them. And you don't have time to go watch them because you're trying to create lesson plans and get things done, and you have lives too. I mean, it's a lot. So that's why you need that time.
Yes. And there is something empowering about watching people within your own district using it successfully, and that you can send them an email. I mean, I watched a lot of YouTube videos for Google Classroom from some woman, I don't even know where she was. And it's just not the same thing as Stacey Play saying to me, let's meet at this time, I'll show you. I don't know. I think that knowing that people, what they're doing and having them share it would be really, really useful to people.
So I think we should definitely make that recommendation to the superintendent, that we take some of those days and don't just use them as planning days. Use one or two of them as unconference days, where they do a faculty meeting in the morning, and in the afternoon, there's a bunch of breakout sessions led by teachers, and you go pick one to watch,
Right.
or two, or three.
Because we're trying to figure out what is best practice in this, but best practice hasn't been established yet because we're building it as we're doing it. So I think we were all feeling that, but it's difficult to know, like what you were saying about, you know, the second graders being able to access it independently. And so I had a fourth grade son who went through it, and he really struggled with that. And my specialist assignments, I had multiple parents email me at the end to say, I just realized that this was here. So how can we talk as a group about how to maybe streamline that so we're all doing the same thing?
Right, and part of the problem with the specials was they were using one Google Classroom for like a whole grade of specials. So that's a lot of kids to have in one Google Classroom. That stream fills up fast. I don't know how you figure out what you're supposed to be doing.
Because if you were on the assignment list, it was all listed there. And we kept the stream updated so that the one at the top said, this is your plan for this week.
Okay.
And then
a lot of parents complained about
smartened
that.
up to create slides that were consistent, that we were each kind of making them in the same format. But that's what I'm talking about. Like, oh, I found by the end to create consistent slides, like what are our successes that other people could share, that I could see, oh, she's doing that. That's brilliant. Like, I'd like to do that too. Like, I don't know, I would like that.
I think the more consistency we can give the parents, the better.
Yes.
You know, I heard good things about Google Classroom at the upper levels, but in the younger grades, it was difficult to navigate. And, you know, so I mean, maybe it's not we don't standardize on Google Classroom everywhere, but we standardize on it where it makes sense, and where it doesn't, we look at the other tools. And one thing I would like to do this year is, I know that IT can provision the Google Classrooms from Aspen, which I think would save teachers a bunch of work.
When you say provision, does that mean like when things are graded in Google Classroom, it would automatically post to Aspen?
We can, well, I don't know about automatically, but we could set up a workflow where you could export your grades from Google and import them into Aspen.
That would be huge.
And we would also export the classes and students from Aspen and import them into Google Classroom. So at the beginning of the year, you log into Google Classroom and all your classes are already there with all the students in them.
Okay, yeah.
And even if we couldn't get the import workflow to work, at least if you know all the kids are synchronized to your Google Classroom, you can do an export of all your grades, and now you're just typing in your list of final grades for the quarter.
Yeah.
Which I think would be a lot easier.
Yeah, I know teachers in the junior high spend hours moving grades from Google Classroom and other platforms into Aspen. Hours and hours every week.
I know, I can say that I never used the gradebook in Google Classroom. I've told parents and students, your grades will be in Aspen and Aspen only. I will never put a grade into Google. I just don't want to duplicate my efforts, so I don't. So if kids or parents want to see the grades, they have to look in Aspen. Right,
but that must mean that you're not taking advantage of the feature where Google grades it for you, Art.
I've got all my rubrics set up in sheets, and each kid gets their own copy. It's a pretty streamlined workflow for me. So, I mean, it works. It may evolve, but
I definitely don't want you guys to have to create the classrooms. I know we can pretty easily take that list of classes and students that are in them out of Aspen and dump them into Google with a script.
Would that preclude the ability of the teacher to add a student?
No, you should be able to add students and subtract. Like, it's not gonna, I don't think it would stay synchronized, but it would get that initial setup done.
Yeah.
Which, you know, if we did that at the beginning of the school year and then again when the classes rolled over, I think that would make everybody's life a little easier. Two things that I would really like to see us do. I know I mentioned it in the last meeting, but I'll say it again. iBoss is a very poor filter right now. And we need to do something because we've got kids who aren't being consistently filtered. I couldn't figure out why I kept getting notifications that kids were attempting to get to porn. I'm like, why are they even trying? They know it's blocked. And it's because it's not blocked consistently. So sometimes they try and it works, and sometimes they try and it's blocked, and I get a notification. So, you know, I'm looking at securely. It's an unbudgeted expense. I'm only looking at the filter product that they have. They also have a feature where they're like scanning through the kids' Google Docs and looking for safety, like keyword searches. And they have another feature where they actually have a person look at all the alerts from that and like notify an administrator. I don't know that we need all that, but I definitely want to look at their filtering because from what I've heard, it works much better than what we've got now, and it's reasonable. I think it's about $4,000 for the year to cover all of our students.
Jeremy, can I interject here?
Go ahead, Joe.
I just set up securely for North Smithfield. We have the exact same issue with the iBoss that you're having. They let us demo securely. In fact, during COVID, it was absolutely free. And I loved it as an administrator. I could do keyword things. So if a kid was looking up suicide, you can be very specific on it because a lot of kids do papers on suicide. Right. We use that whole package, though, where it had that land school feature where the teachers could actually see what their students were doing in Google Classroom. But, you know, in comparison to iBoss, Jeremy, I love Securely. It was a world of difference.
And you know, I am aware that Securely has that. It's basically a GoGuardian style feature where you can, but that's not something we're interested in right now. I'm really just looking at the filtering.
Well, as far as the filtering, I loved it because I also could, each of our schools had different subnets. So I could set different rules for different grade levels or subnets. So I liked it, but you might want to demo it. They were so generous in giving us the demo.
They're more than willing to set up a demo.
I know they are.
I'm waiting for my new systems administrator to set up the demo.
Oh, all right. Hopefully he'll be on board soon.
From what I understand, he's starting really soon.
Yeah, he is. I'll speak to him later.
And the other thing that I feel like we absolutely have to have, our help desk ticketing system was okay, but in this remote learning, it is so cumbersome to try and get people to enter tickets and keep track of what's going on. We need, and we don't have anything besides spreadsheets to keep track of where devices are for our inventory. I would really like to get something that integrates the help desk with the inventory with Google. And I found one. It's called Incident IQ. It comes very highly recommended by lots of school districts. And it's also reasonably inexpensive. So I'd like to put forward a recommendation that we look into funding that through with, you know, as a COVID expense, because, and then put it in the budget again for next year, because what we have now, while it's great that it's free, it just, you know, the students don't have accounts, the devices aren't in there. It would be so much easier if a kid clicked sign in with Google, it knew which Chromebook they had, and he could type in, you know, my screen is cracked. And then we issue him a loaner, and that's listed in and we don't have to keep track of which devices kids have, because when they get issued, it's in our inventory system and in our help desk system. Same thing with teachers, like trying to keep track of which teacher has which device and whether or not they've gotten turned in when they retire or when they go on long-term leave, or, you know, and then we issued devices to all the Council 94 members. So that's even more devices that we're trying to keep track of. It's out of hand. And I think we definitely need something to get that under control. So right now, we took pictures we put a label on a Chromebook and took a picture of the label with the student's name and ID number and the serial number. And Max transferred all those serial numbers to the student's record in Aspen. So all the students who were issued Chromebooks during COVID have their serial numbers in Aspen. And then when the students turned in the devices, because some of the students did and some didn't, because the governors gave conflicting information to what the school was asking for. We asked everybody in elementary to turn their devices in. The governor said, if you borrowed a device from a school, you should keep it. So some people turned them in and some people kept them. A lot of people just ignored our emails because, school's over. I don't have to read this. So
That sounds like a fairly thankless job to take the picture of the device and transfer all that manually.
Taking the pictures and sending them was thankless, and I thank Alicia for doing it. She was one of the people who was doing that.
Here's my high-tech device.
And then Max, he spent a whole
Max had the hard job.
couple of days just looking at pictures and typing in serial numbers. And then when I went to
the one that they had and they brought that back, you took another picture.
Right.
Poor Max.
And then when Max entered them all in Aspen, and then I went to look at the list, I'm like, Max, I don't see any of these. Well, if there's 2 device serial number fields in Aspen, and he put them in one and I was looking at the other. So he had a panic attack thinking that he entered all that information and it just disappeared. But we found it. So it was cumbersome, and that's not the way we should be doing this.
No, and if we have to go back to that type of environment, if it was in that kind of system when they came to our window, ideally we could access that and say, taken in, and this is what we put back out.
Exactly, with a barcode scanner.
With a barcode, shoot, right there, like from the library. Scan it, on we go.
So that's what I'd like to do.
That would be very logical.
As long as we have a consensus to do that. So what I'm looking for is a consensus on which products we should continue to investigate and possibly recommend that we purchase even though they're unbudgeted. So does anybody have any opinions on any of the ones that we talked about today? Any that they don't think we should do? Or that we definitely should, or we should look into some of the schools, or here's a summary by school.
I guess as someone who has a school issued device that's a Chromebook, I'm going to look for something that is a good replacement for Screencastify if it's not if we're not moving in that direction. And I was just looking Screencastify. I think I can, as an individual, can get it for $29 for a year. And so I'm throwing out that, and I know there are other tools, and a lot of teachers have MacBooks, so they can just use QuickTime to record their screens or something else.
Right.
I'm just mulling over in my head what I'm going to do and what the message might look like and what the tools will look like for teachers that are going to be recording.
The request for Ed Puzzle came from the junior high and the senior high. We didn't have any from Metcalf.
I would recommend, like, Ed Puzzle is going to be critical. I mean, I learned a lot during the last last few months, and I'm going to rely on Ed Puzzle a lot more than I did in the initial distance learning.
So as long as we as a committee agree that this is a good tool we should recommend for use everywhere, then let's move forward with it. You know, I hear you guys saying it's a good tool and everybody should be using it, or at least at Metcalf and the junior high and the senior high.
I think, Jeremy, to the point that Michelle was making, part of this is to choose those key things and then on our PD days have time devoted to that so that then everybody knows, because the TAs did during this time, we had PD every week.
Right.
And I have to say, some weeks it was intensive for us with the other things that were going on, especially earlier on, but they were so beneficial because I think the program Michelle might have been talking about that Gina showed was Google Read and Write. Well, we had no exposure to that. And I'm willing to bet probably at least 80% of our teachers don't know how to use Google Read and Write. And when we talk about equity in the classroom from a bigger standpoint, that would help level that playing field at all grades if the teachers knew how to use Google Read and Write and they could embed their instructions within the document that they're giving to them, and they could have a little audio clip that would play to tell the student what to do. And that's a simple example of one of the tools that we already have and pay for. It's
Right.
out there that I think we need to create a list of from the teachers. I don't know if that's even the right place to find it because so many of them don't know that they have it, to say that they don't know how to use it.
Right, like a recommended resource and premium resource list of stuff we actually have. And, you know,
Right.
here's a video of somebody in our district actually using it.
Using
And
it, yeah.
we're also going to have,
Great
you know,
job
a
presenting.
breakout session about it
Yep.
at the next unconference.
Yeah, I think that's like, if you can tap people that are comfortable with it, and have them do the trainings, I think that'd be much more receptive and people then would start using it if we narrowed the choices almost, because then those are the choices and we're going to learn how to use those choices. I think right now there's too much out there that many people don't know where to start.
Right.
Or even a
don't know
demo,
what they
an
know.
alternative to Screencastify, this is how you do it.
Right.
That would get use.
Like just recognizing you guys asked for Screencastify and it's really expensive. So what we did was we came up with these alternatives that we want you to give them a shot, see which one might work for you.
Exactly. With a demonstration of how someone would use it, I think would be very effective.
I think
Right.
we can just say,
Art
give it
showed
a
me
shot.
how to
We don't
use-
have to say, here's the training.
Adobe Spark, I used a ton. And a lot of people don't know that it exists, and it's very user-friendly, and you can do a lot with it. And I think
Yeah.
that would be another tool that people could.
I wouldn't double down on Adobe Spark.
Say it again?
I would not double down on Adobe Spark. So Adobe is not compliant with Rhode Island state law on student data privacy.
Oh, no.
And they have basically said, go pound sand. When we said, we need you to sign a data privacy agreement. So the Data Privacy Alliance that we're part of includes 29 states. And they were having a conference call last month to try and pressure Adobe into signing. And basically Adobe's come back with, there is no way to make our software as it exists right now compliant with the law because we do use your data.
How much longer can we ignore that and keep using it?
Not much. So what we would need to do, I think we can get by with it for this year, for this coming school year, but I think next year we're going to need to request parental permission for every student who's actually using it. And if the student's parent doesn't agree, then the student can't use it.
What about teachers using it to create things?
You can give away your information all you want, Michelle. You just can't give away student information. But
Just when you get comfortable with something.
some of the tools that Arts department uses require Adobe, like the whole class is around, like the Photoshop class. You can't teach Photoshop without Photoshop. You know, in his video productions class, it's really difficult to teach people Premiere if you can't have them using Premiere. And part of that can be gotten away with by using generic accounts, but it doesn't give them the features that to use the online tools. So, you know, which is what Adobe is pushing towards, because they get more of your data that way so that they can sell.
Interesting. Spark in particular is a dynamic, awesome tool for kids to tell a story with.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm hoping they'll change their position and fix their problems. But basically what I was told was they can't be compliant right now with the terms in our student data privacy agreement. Now, I don't think they're actually selling students' email addresses, but they are collecting data and anonymizing it and selling it. And, you know, that's not how it's supposed to work when you're dealing with students. It's supposed to be our data that we can ask them to delete on demand.
Right.
And I think that's a big part of it, is there's no mechanism in place where they can delete that data. They keep it forever. But anyway.
Boo hiss Adobe.
Exactly.
Sorry, Michelle.
If you find a replacement for that one, I'll take it.
So I will continue to look at that, and hopefully Adobe will come around and we can find some way to make it work. But I just wanted to make you aware, don't be heavily investing in Adobe right now, because they've already turned us down. They might change their mind, but anything else under software, survey, and planning? I think we have a consensus that we're going to try and look into all these tools and figure out which ones we could recommend. Is it all these tools or only the ones that lots of people have requested? Because also on here is Gizmos and Raz Kids and Actively Learn.
So when I threw this survey together, it was in an attempt to find out what we didn't know.
Right.
It wasn't an attempt to create a comprehensive list, but I was kind of fishing for the gems that are out there that we don't even know about, that have become critical to teachers. So that was kind of the heading or the description of the form as it was sent out to faculty for completion. So it's not a comprehensive list. There are probably gems that are not on this either.
Right.
It was kind of put out there with what hidden gem have you found that is indispensable for distance learning? Tell us about it. And the comments are kind of interesting. Some descriptions of how teachers use it and why they use it, and pleading to please get it. So.
Right.
So, you know, it's kind of hard. I agree with what Michelle was saying about, you know, we don't really know which ones are the best ones. I know a couple that I used that I would probably continue to use if I had access to them aren't even ones that you mentioned,
Right.
which are IXL. And then there's another one called CK-12.
So CK, IXL we already pay for the junior high, I believe. And CK-12, that's the California curriculum.
Yeah.
Is there a charge for that, or is that free?
No.
That's it. There's no, because I used it for free, but I didn't know if there was an upgraded version available.
As far as I know, it's just free.
Oh, okay.
That's what California uses for their curriculum.
Oh, okay.
A few years ago, they paid a bunch of teachers to develop curriculum and then made it available for everybody.
Oh.
And the way they finance it is you can actually take all the pieces of a book from the CK-12 library, put them in whatever order you want, leave out the chapters you don't want, put in the units you do want, and actually have them print the book and send you 150 copies for your class. So, I mean, it's pretty cool. It's open curriculum. So, and that's how they, they make a little bit of money on the book, and that covers the cost of running the website and paying the stipends to the teachers to create more curriculum. But
It's
it's
really creative.
Yeah, it is a cool site. And when students do quizzes on there, it automatically reports their score into Google Classroom.
that's really cool.
Yeah.
But that's something people would want to know. That's the examples of the stuff that people need to hear.
Absolutely.
Right, and that's the, whether it's free or it's a charge, I think we need to have that kind of message and training scheduled that teachers and TAs are part of, and you have to be there, because otherwise you're not going to get the information if you just need to find the time to dig through that list and say, oh, what does this program do? Is it good? Is it not good? Somehow we need to identify those and say, this PD, we're going to cover these, and this is what's going to help you for this year. I don't
Right.
know. It's just, we felt
Like a 2-sentence abstract that says why this is useful to you.
Yep.
People in EWG that use this app, like just so there's a person that you could maybe contact, or
right.
that would be really helpful rather than just a blanket list.
Well, that's actually in the form responses. So Art actually shared that in the chat window. So you guys can actually open that up and look at the form responses and see the comments for each tool. And then he's got 2 different summary pages, one that lists the apps and the number of people who wanted it, and then he's broke it out to a summary by school, which is nice, so we can see which schools requested them. So yeah, well, maybe we could add a column where people can put in their from here their comments, and we'll work on that offline. We spend a lot of time talking about that. I want to get through the rest of this.
If you need to edit the document, just let me know. We'll make it happen.
Maybe just make some notes and send them to me so I can collate them together. Under old business budget update, if you weren't aware, the town taxpayers voted down the school budget. So there's a significant shortfall between last year's budget and what we requested this year. All of our school committee approved budget items are on the table because Jim needs to figure out what recommendation he's going to make, and the school committee is going to have to decide what they're going to remove from the budget to make it work. So there's that. Under technology department staffing, Joe introduced himself earlier. It's good to have him on board. The technology plan, we should work on that. I'm going to keep saying that every meeting until we actually get around to working on it. And my favorite part of the meeting, share something awesome. Do you guys have anything awesome to share? I know you don't have.
Goat last night and saved it. It was not doing well.
You delivered a goat last night?
I got a call last night about 9:15, and the person said, are you busy? I think she might be having a baby and its head has been stuck a long time.
I'd see.
I literally put on different shoes and ran out the door. And by 11 o'clock, it was alive and breathing and doing well, and is still doing well today. But when I got there, it was very questionable.
Wow.
So that was good news.
You're a regular James Harriet.
It was exciting in amongst the bad news that was coming in at the same time about the budget. So
that's awesome.
That was cool.
I still have kids showing up for the radio club. I'm still running it on Thursdays, and they're still popping in, 1 or 2 a week. So I think that's really cool that they're taking time out of their summer to come to my radio club.
That is very cool. I'm getting a lot of emails from kids. We did a Rooster Games and we had a huge success with it. A lot of kids participated, and it was just, we didn't know if it was going to work online, and it went better than we could have expected. And now I'm getting emails from kids asking for the updated link because they want to prepare for next year already. And that to me just made it all worth it, all that stress and worry. And they're still like pretty much multiple times a week, I'm getting emails from parents and kids. How do we keep this going? So
That's
And
awesome.
love the Rooster Games. That has like been such a highlight of our years. And I know Cora loved being able to do the book battle because she was disappointed not to do Rooster Games. And
Yeah.
the West Greenwich Library has been doing a great job at keeping an online book club going
Yeah.
for the kids. And they're meeting virtually and taking books from the list and working on them. So they're having a great time with it.
Yeah, we're doing it in Exeter too. That's been the best success, I think, all year, is just the connection that we've made with the two public libraries and integrating our work. So Amy Fontaine from Exeter has been coming to Metcalf once a month for the Rooster meetings, but now we've moved them online, and Steph does the middle school stuff. So that's been I just love the connection that's happening in the community, and the kids see us all together and they're like, you know each other, which I love.
They're so excited when they're moving on to the next book. I mean, my guys were on me because I wasn't there picking that book up the first day that it was ready at the library.
Yeah, it's awesome.
So that excitement is great to keep going.
That's really great. So does anybody have anything else before we,
Yeah, I'll throw out, there's obviously nothing going on in my classes right now. But having had a few days to distance from that whole experience from mid-March on, I know there are going to be some things that happen differently that are going to put it to a much better position to be successful going forward if distance learning happens again. And it probably will.
well, it definitely will. We've got those PD days where kids will definitely be doing distance. So they count as a part of the 180. So the kids have to be doing distance learning, even though they're not in school. And there's zero plans to have snow days next year. So even if we don't have any COVID related remote learning, we'll still be planning to do remote learning next year.
What will happen with snow days that there's no electricity?
Packets. Kids will have packets already of stuff that's not necessarily what they're currently learning, but like extra stuff.
Okay.
That's my understanding.
So once we hit those months, they'll have a packet that sits at home.
Right.
Oh.
Okay. If there's nothing else, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second? Is there a second?
I can't second it, but I would if I could.
I'll second it.
All right. This meeting's adjourned. Thank you guys for coming. I really appreciate you taking time out of your summer to come. We'll probably have one more in August. August. And then we'll pick it back up. Probably not the first week in September, but maybe the second or third week after you've had a little bit of chance to get back. But I do want to continue the work, and I feel like these are really good conversations. And if you think of anything outside, feel free to shoot me an email. We put it on an agenda for discussion here. I can bring it up in the planning committees for returning to school. Don't be afraid to reach out to me. I'm here as a resource. And so is Joe.
Yes.
All right.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
And help.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.